white noise. When I got off the bus, I felt eyes on me, that prickling sensation that makes you iced. When I got to my apartment building, I practically ran inside, feeling a sense of unease gnawing at my chest. My neighbor, Jenny, was standing in the hallway fumbling with her keys. She smiled at me, but something was wrong with her smile. It looked forced, like her mouth was too tight. Like she wasn't sure how to move her face anymore. Long day? She asked in that casual, neighborly way, but her voice was flat, hollow almost, like she didn't care about the answer. Yeah, I mumbled, fumbling with my own keys. You? She blinked at me, too slowly. Same as always. She went inside, closed the door, and stood there for a long time, my back pressed against the wood listening. Her footsteps didn't move. She stayed in the hallway for far longer than she should have, just standing there. I could hear her. I'm getting food ready! At work, things were worse. My coworkers, people I'd known for years, were acting off. They'd smile too long, their mouths twitching at the corners. They'd laugh at things that weren't funny, and sometimes in the middle of a conversation, they'd stop. Just stop and stare at me like they were waiting for something. At lunch, I asked my friend Mark if he'd noticed anything strange. Strange? He said, stabbing at his salad with his fork. His movements too mechanical. Like what? I don't know. People, they're acting weird. Mark gave me a look, but his face didn't seem right. His eyes were too wide, his mouth stretched unnaturally. You're just tired, man. Maybe you need a break. Maybe I did, but as we talked, I couldn't stop staring at his hands. They didn't stop moving, even when he wasn't talking. They twitched, flexed, tapped at the table, like they had a mind of their own. I looked around the cafeteria and suddenly I noticed it. Everyone's hands were moving, twisting, tapping, fidgeting, but their faces stayed perfectly still. I left work early that day telling myself it was just in my head, but deep down I knew something was happening. The world wasn't the same anymore. People weren't the same. And the worst part, I could feel it starting in me too. That evening I stood in front of the bathroom mirror, staring at my reflection. My face looked the same, but I didn't feel like me. My smile didn't look right. I tried to smile, tried to make it normal, but the corners of my mouth stretched too wide, too tight, like I wasn't in control of it anymore. My hands were shaking, and not just from fear. They wouldn't stop twitching, jerking in tiny, uncontrollable movements. By the time I got to bed, my whole body felt wrong. My skin felt too tight, like it was stretching over bones that weren't mine. I lay there staring at the ceiling, trying to calm myself down, but the hum was louder now. I could feel it, like a low, vibrating pulse under the mattress, in the walls under my skin. I closed my eyes, but it didn't help. The darkness behind my eyelids was alive, shifting and pulsing, full of shadows that shouldn't have been there. And just as I was drifting off, I heard it. A knock. It was faint, but unmistakable. A slow, deliberate knock at my bedroom door. I sat up, heart racing, listening. Another knock and then a voice. Let us in. It was my neighbor Jenny, but her voice was wrong, just like her smile had been. Flat, hollow, like a recording. Another knock. Let us in. I couldn't move. I couldn't. Then more voices joined hers. Mark, the old man from the bus, the woman with the stroller, their voices, all layered together, echoing through the door. Let us in. I pressed myself back against the headboard, trying not to breathe, trying not to make a sound, but the knocking grew louder, more insistent. Then the door handle began to turn slowly, deliberately. My heart hammered in my chest. The knob twisted with a soft click, but the door didn't open. I didn't breathe. "Let us in," Jenny's voice whispered again, but this time it was joined by others. Mark's voice, the woman from the bus, the baby's laughter, they all murmured in unison, voices layering over each other until it became a low, rhythmic chant. I pressed myself tighter against the headboard, feeling my skin. Everything went silent. I don't know what's real anymore. I don't know if it's them or if it's me, but every time I look in the mirror, I can see it. The twitching, the smile that doesn't fit, the way my hands won't stop moving. I think I'm becoming one of them, and I don't know how to stop it. I was told to be off the land before sundown. The park ranger was very adamant that I had to be gone by then tonight because that's when the park closed. He really emphasized tonight, which I thought was strange, but I followed his rule. I was the only person fishing the lake. It was beautiful and the fish were still biting, but I turned back plenty early. It was a decent walk on the trail because of the way the trail winds around the outer part of the property. I just got back to the truck when several vehicles pulled up to the parking area. "What the?" I said out loud. I could see the ranger in the entrance gate building, and he just let them through. Then several more came in. So much for the park closing by sundown. All the people getting out of the vehicles were elderly folks. I thought, what do these old people need the whole park for? It's a state park. They don't deserve the whole thing. I remember thinking some of these small town people around here think they own all this. But we all do, right? So F 'em. I grabbed my stuff and headed back out to the lake. I had time to get some more good fishing in. I figured no one would even notice I'm there, and I really wanted to bring home some keepers. God, I wish I could have just left. On my way back, I decided to go off the trail and cut through a part of the forest. I remember thinking, is this a good idea? Then continuing on my way. It really wasn't that bad at first, and I wasn't carrying that much other than a pole, a small tackle box, and a bucket. Though the fish were biting, they weren't big enough to bother bringing home, so my bucket was empty. The walk started to seem like it was taking a little too long when I noticed the sun was completely gone. The sky was black. It was a clear night and there were stars, but there was no moon. As I went further, the ground was more and more covered in brush. It was tripping me up. With no light except for stars, only feeling my way through. It was like sinking deeper and deeper. Everything seemed larger or I felt smaller, but I continued on as my instinct told me to. I got a strange chill and I stopped, froze completely, then I threw my gear down and froze again. Everything was silent for a moment. Then I heard a cracking noise. Probably a small animal, I thought. I heard the same noise but a little louder and closer. Then crunching and crackling surrounded me. Breath. "Whoa, where'd you come from?" one person said. Still out of breath, I tried to reply. "Sorry, couldn't understand you, buddy," he said before turning away from me, continuing to his conversation with the others at his gathering. It was all very odd and frustrating. Then I gathered myself enough to speak. "There is something," I said while pointing to the woods. Now they all paused their conversations and are looking at me curiously. "Something big is out there," I said. But confusingly to me, they all started smiling. I was irritated by them, thinking they thought I was crazy. "What are you all doing out here anyway? You've got to listen to me," I said. I glanced around at them as they just stared at me. Then they all started moving in a little closer. Okay. One of them said in a trying to be calming but condescending way. His hands motioned a "let's bring it down" kind of motion. I was annoyed.